Okay, so good morning. We are making wonderful progress through Maseches Nedarim, and thank you for your patience and willingness to have me on Zoom only today, coming from Silver Spring, Maryland. So happy to be even learning long distance and continuing our path through Maseches Nedarim. So we are at the Mishnah. Let me share my screen. We are at the Mishnah at the top of Yud Zayin Amud Aleph, and so let's see where we are to understand this Mishnah. So yesterday we learned three different Mishnayot, and these Mishnayot discussed a variety of topics associated with Nedarim and Shavuot. In the third of them, the last of the Mishnayot that we learned yesterday, we discussed how Shavuot can be more stringent than Nedarim and vice versa. And so we pick up with near the top of Yud Zayin Amud Aleph with the Mishnah that lists another difference, other differences between Nedarim and Shavuot. So Yesh Neder B'toch Neder. There is something, we'll define it literally here. There is a neder within another neder. And so the Ran helps us understand what this is all talking about, but we'll get to it in a moment. But you can't do, but when it comes to a shvua within a shvua, that doesn't exist. So Kate said, Amar Hareini Nazir im Ochel, Hareini Nazir im Ochel. If I were to say, I'm going to be a nazir, or anybody were going to say that they're going to be a nazir if they eat something and they say it twice and then they eat, well, chayav al kol achas v'achas. So each time they eat, they would be chayav twice. So instead of just once. And similarly, but on the other hand, rather, I should say, shvua shelo ochel, if I say I'm going to not eat, I'm not going to eat something in particular, the achal, and then I eat that object, that piece of food. So einu chayav ela achas, then I'm only chayav once because, and so let's see. The Ran does a nice job of, as often is the case, of explaining the literal read here. So yesh neder b'toch neder. So if we take a look, third line down in the Ran. Amar Hareini Nazir im Ochel, right? So Mefarish b'Gemara the im Ochel lav dafka. That we will note in the Gemara that although this neder is a conditional one, it is conditioned on whether or not one eats. That wasn't really an important aspect of what the Mishnah was trying to teach. Okay, because Dehu Hadin Nami im Amar Hareini Nazir, that the same rule would apply if the person says, I'm a Nazir. So Dechayav al kol achas v'achas, that he would be obligated for each time he said it. Ella Aidi de Tana Gabi Shavua Shalo Ochel Tana Nami Gabi Nazir im Ochel. That since the oath that is going to be made at the end of the Mishnah was about not eating, so we made, or related to eating generally. Similarly, we wanted to make the first part of our Mishnah be conditional in connection with eating as well. And we will see that this reference to the Gemara discussing this is actually only a reference to language that the Ran has. He has a different girsa from what we have in our Gemara, and we will start with that Ran's girsa as we get to the Gemara. But let's continue in this Ran. V'chayav al kol achas v'achas, and you're obligated on each one. Da'amrinan lomar dechayev linog naziros al kol kabbalah v'kabbalah, that we say that you're obligated to be a nazir for each time you accept to be a nazir. V'chi amar hareini nazir dechayev shtei naziros, and so that's why if you say that you're going to be a nazir twice, you're going to have to be a nazir twice. Umona shlosh, and now what does that mean? Okay, this is an important difference between the Ran and the Ritva. So the Ran explains, right, that what does it mean? Umona shloshim yom, you count 30 days, which is the minimum amount of time that one can be a nazir. Umevi karban, and then you bring a sacrifice. V'chozer umonim shloshim yom umevi karban, and then you have to observe a second 30 days. That's what this means according to the Ran. V'nafkalan b'gemara min nazir lahazir. and we learn it from the double language of Nazir that it says in the Psukim in the Torah, in Sefer Bamidbar. So v'kari le lahai gavna neder b'toch neder. Now, let's explain the language. Why is it called a neder b'toch neder? And this is why it's so fun to read the Ran. He really helps us understand every aspect of the Gemara. L'fisha hanizirot shniya he chala b'toch zman harishona. Because the second time you say it, it is applying in the middle of the first time that you said it. Meaning, if somebody says, I'm going to be a Nazir, they are immediately a Nazir. Now the person says again, I am a Nazir. Within that time that the person was already a Nazir, now we're going to say that you can be a Nazir again. That's what it means, that it's a valid a neder within another neder, because it's within the time frame of the neder. You're saying it a second time. The problem is that you can't count the days for your second time of being in Nazirus until you finish the counting for your first times. That if you don't say that on some level the neder has effect immediately, how could you say that it would come into effect later? You didn't make a neder at that time. So if the neder doesn't have any effect now, it can't be that the neder only pops into existence at the end, because you didn't do anything at that point. The kavan de lo chayla hashta lo chayla nami basar zimna. If it doesn't apply now, it won't apply later. Elavadai mehashta hu de chayla. It's right now that it begins to apply. Umishum hachikatani yesh neder betoch neder. And so now we understand why the language of neder betoch neder, that's talking about within the time frame of the initial one, that's when you have the second one. So that is point number 1. Okay, so that's our Mishnah. And now let's take a look at the Gemara. But as I said, let's begin the Gemara by looking in the Ran as well. So second of the widest lines in the Ran, where it says Gemara, Gimel Mem. So we'll read that, and that's the language that the Ran has. So, you can see at the end in the where he begins his discussion, he says Zuha Girsa Ksuva b'miktsas nuschaot v'hachi perush. Okay, and so he says that this is the nusach that you have in some svarim, and again, this was the nusach that he was referring to. So let's take a look and we'll learn it. So Kavan de Amar Hareini Nazir Havalei Nazir. Well, if he were to say that behold, I'm a Nazir, so then he would be a Nazir. V'chi achel tuva umatrin bei mechayev al kol achila v'achila. And so if he then, whenever he eats, he will be obligated to be a Nazir on each time that he eats. So I did the Kitani Shvua, Shlo Ochel, Tani Name Hareini Nazir Im Ochel. And so why did we need to do that? The Gemara explains it because the Shvua was about not eating. So then we have the text of the Nazir that he talks about if he eats. But the olam gabi nazir lo tzarach lameimar im ochel. But really, when it comes to the nazir, you wouldn't need to have the language of if I eat. The if I eat is only relevant because we wanted to make it parallel to the end of the Mishnah. So now picking back up into the text of the Gemara. So Amar Rav Huna lo shanu ela de Amar hareini nazir hayom hareini nazir lamachar. So the first point is this: we're going to have a debate between Rav Huna and Shmuel. Rav Huna says that when we're talking about our Mishnah where there's a double Nazir, there's got to be a difference between the two Nazirut. So that the first one, he says, I'm a Nazir today, and the second one, he says, I'm a Nazir tomorrow. Why is that relevant? Because each period of Nazirut is 30 days. So when he says, I'm going to be a Nazir tomorrow, that's going to add a day of his Nazirut. Now, you can't have one day of Nazirut. So as we'll explain in a moment. So as a result, you end up with a full second 30 days. Demigu dekami tosef yoma yisera. That according to Rav Huna, since you added an extra day of Nazirut, chayla Nazirut al Nazirut. So the second time you said it takes effect on the first time, and as a result, you're going to end up with 2 periods. So how do you explain that? So the Ran really helps us here. So if you take a look at the Ran, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 lines up from the bottom of the widest lines of the Ran, Demigu demitosiv yomi yasever, that since you added an additional day, kolomar dekisha amar hareini nazar lamachar, that when you said the words that I'm going to be a nazar tomorrow, yesh b'mashma utvarav shimne miyom matarat, that you'll begin macharat, that you'll begin counting from the next day. The elach, and that point on lamed yom nimtza shenischayev machmat neder sheni yom echad mosif al nazirot rishona. So it turns out that you're obligated for 1 additional day. The kaven de kaimelan b'meseches nazir da omer hareini nazir yom zeh bilvad, and we learned in Maseches Nazir, or we will learn in Maseches Nazir, that and we'll establish in Maseches Nazir that in fact, if you say that I'm going to be a Nazir for just 1 day and only this day, monish loshim yom, you have to actually be a Nazir for a full 30 days. Af zeh kaven shenischayev mechmat nidro sheni limnot yom echad musaf, that since this second time you counted, the second time you said you were going to be a Nazir, you obligated yourself to add 1 additional day on the Zirut Rishona, on the first one, Al Karcho Mona Lamed. So you have to add another 30 days. So effectively, when you make when you make the second oath, you're effectively only adding 1 day. The effect of that is as if you were to have said on that 31st day, I want to be a Nazir just for today. And what's the triggering? What happens if you were to do that? You'd have to have a whole new period of Nazirut. And so when you say you're going to be a Nazir twice and you add some period of time, that period of time ends up needing to be an additional 30 days. Okay, so that is Rav Huna's approach. Aval Amar Hareini Nazir Hayom, and he continues, but if one were to say just simply twice, I'm a Nazir today, I'm a Nazir today, and so as a result, he hasn't added anything through the second opportunity to say it, Ein chala nazirus al nazirus. So then in that situation, the second nazirut will have no effect, and he won't have a nazirut al nazirut. Now, I realize that I did not offer the Ritva's explanation. So let me just go back and say what the Ritva understands. The Ritva understands when you say in our Mishnah, Hareini Nazir, it does not mean that you end up observing 2 periods of Nazirut, that you observe 30 days and then another 30 days, but rather that you observe that the single period that you observe has almost like a double Kedusha to it. And what do I mean by that? I mean that if in fact somebody were to make a mistake and become Tameh, rather than 1 set of sacrifices, you would have to bring 2 sets. And so as a result, that's how the Ritva understands it. That it literally means that the Naziruts, the 2 Naziruts overlap. So it's a little easier to understand what it means bitoch, because it's literally in the same time that you're a Nazir twice. So both of them have a logic to them. But again, since we are learning Maseches Nedarim in connection with the Ran, we're going to primarily follow the Ran's approach. All right, so that was back to our Mishnah. Sorry to have omitted that when we learned our Mishnah. But now back to our machlokas between Rav Huna and Shmuel. So Rav Huna said that what's the story? The story is that you got to add something in order for the second Nazirut to apply. So then you got to add something. But Shmuel says no. Even if you were to say, I'm a Nazir today, then he would have 2 Nazirut on him. So as a result, that's the machlokas. So now we're going to bring 4 challenges to Rav Huna. Although today we're only going to cover 3 of those challenges, and we'll leave the 4th as a surprise, God willing, for tomorrow. So now, interestingly, often once you have a kasha on somebody, the whole process ends, or we leave it for the last. But in this case, especially since we're going to be challenging Rav Huna from our Mishnah to begin with, it turns out that the first challenge is going to pose a question on Rav Huna that's going to be a very big difficulty, but we're going to continue with additional challenges. So let's take a look at the first challenge. And the first challenge, again, comes from our Mishnah. Ul Rav Huna. Now, according to Rav Huna, Adatana ein shvua b'tok shvua. Now, we learned in that which we learned in our Mishnah, that there's no shvua within another shvua. So why did we learn that? Litany, we could have learned instead, yesh neder b'tok neder, ve'ein neder b'tok neder, that sometimes you have a neder b'tok neder, and sometimes you don't have a neder b'tok neder. You don't have a neder b'tok neder. When do you have a neder b'tok neder? If you say hareini nazar hayom, hareini nazar l'machar, yesh neder b'tok neder. Well, if you say I'm going to be a nazar today, I'm going to be a nazar tomorrow, then you would actually have the double nazirut. But if you say hareini nazar hayom, hareini nazar hayom, but if you were to say the same line twice, then, as we pick up on Yud Zayin Amabet, continuing the next step. The next page. So ein neder b'tok neder. So then we were to say that you don't have a neder b'tok neder. So the point is like, here you're differentiating between neder and shvua, but there is a distinction to be made even within neder, and our Mishnah should teach us that. So kasha, in fact, it's difficult. Now, I will note that this doesn't have the language of tiyuvta. Tiyuvta means effectively that there's no possible answer. Here, it's only a kasha. Now, you can come up with an answer, a variety of answers. What's the context that we're talking about here? We're talking about differences between shvua and neder. So as a result, our Mishnah chose to focus on the difference between shvua and neder. But nonetheless, it's still a good question, and it's not, and although there's answers, it's not a perfect answer. So, all right, so that was challenge number 1. So now we go to challenge number 2, again focused from our Mishnah. As is often the case, the reason that we bring a particular Gemara is to bring a challenge from our Mishnah. So let's take a look. So Tanan, what did we learn in our Mishnah? Yesh neder b'tok neder ve'ein shvua b'tok shvua. Right? We said that there's a neder within a neder, but there isn't a shvua within a shvua. So heichidami. So now we're going to say, look, we want, if you're going to make that kind of bald statement, that there's a neder within a neder and a shvua within a shvua, but not a shvua within a shvua, then you should be comparing similar things. So now, if you want to say that when our Mishnah was talking about a neder within a neder, it was saying, I'm a nazar today, I'm a nazar tomorrow, which of course is the way Rav Huna understands the kavasa gabi shvua. Well, then we need to have a similar case when we're talking about Shavua. And what would that be? So the Gemara's initial proposal of what a similar case to I'm a nazar today and I'm a nazar tomorrow would be is Shalo Ochel Ta'anim, V'chazer V'amar Shvua Shalo Ochel Anavim. First I say I'm not going to eat figs, and then I say I'm not going to eat grapes. So those would be 2 Shvuot that would be that the parallel of I'm a nazar today, I'm a nazar tomorrow. And of course, what am I lo chala shvua al shvua? In which case, why wouldn't the second oath take effect? Of course it takes effect. They're completely different oaths. And so as a result, it should take effect as well. So ela heki dami de lo chala shvua al shvua. So what is this kind of case of a shvua that doesn't take effect on another shvua? Now we're going to work backwards, right? Kagon to amar shvua shelo ochel tainim because of amar shvua shelo ochel tainim, right? It's doubling the oath that you're not going to eat figs. So that's the oath that doesn't take effect. Well, the kavasa gabe nazirus hechidami. What would be the similar oath with respect to Nazirut? To Amar Hareini Nazir Hayom, Hareini Nazir Hayom. It would be saying, I'm a Nazir today, I'm a Nazir today. V'gatani yesh neder b'tok neder. But now our Mishnah is saying, in that situation, there is a neder within another neder. So Kashila Rav Huna. Doesn't this seem to be very difficult for Rav Huna? And so the answer is no. we can offer an explanation that makes it work for Rav Huna. So Amar Lach Rav Huna, Maslizin de Amar Hareini Nazar Ayom Hareini Nazar L'macha. As I've said, when I said that our Mishnah is what our Mishnah is talking about is when you say, I'm a Nazir today, I'm a Nazir tomorrow. So to Kavase Gabi Shvua. And what is the parallel case for a Shvua? It's not the case of I won't eat grapes, I won't eat figs. That's not it. But rather to Amar Shalo Ochel Ta'anim, because of Amar Shavua Shalo Ochel Ta'anim Ve'anavim. That if I were to say I'm not going to eat figs, and then I say I'm not going to eat figs with grapes, or figs and grapes. Now again, here it's key that the Gemara definitely understands that this is figs with grapes. That it's on some level eating both causes the problem. That if you eat only one, you have not violated it. So you've added something extra, namely you've added grapes to it, but you've kept the obligation not to eat figs. And so that's the situation that Rav Huna would tell you it's not a valid oath. That second oath of I will not eat figs and grapes does not take any effect. Delo chayla, that does not take any effect. Okay, so and so that will be the case of no shvua within a shvua. The Amar Rabba, but 1 second, could that be the case that an oath that after one swears I'm not going to eat figs, if one swears I'm not going to eat figs and I'm not going to eat grapes, meaning I'm going to double my oath. So that is that really not an oath? Rabba seems to say that it is an oath. Shvua shelo okel ta'anim, because of Amar shvua shelo okel ta'anim v'anavim. In the case that we just talked about, where one says I'm not going to eat figs, and then one says I'm not going to eat figs and grapes. Yes. So the okel ta'anim, and now you ate just figs and the hifrish carbon, and then you brought a sacrifice, or you separated a sacrifice. So you recognize that you obviously this is a situation where you did it unintentionally, but you ate the figs. You thought that you didn't think that there was figs in the particular dish, and so you ended up eating it. And now you set aside your offering, so you've already done on some level the one aspect of the atonement. So v'chazer v'akal anavim, and now you eat grapes on their own, again without the intention to eat them. So havya lahu anavim chatzi shir. Those grapes constitute a half a shear. What is the aim of Mavian carbon al chatzi shear? And we don't bring a sacrifice on half of us of the amount of that one needs to eat in order to violate, right? Because one only ate the grapes on the second eating. One didn't eat any figs with it. But the bottom line is, Alma hechida amar shvua shelo ochel ta'anim v'chazer amar shvua shelo ochel ta'anim ve'anavim. That the migo dechal shvua al anavim chayla nama al ta'anim. We see that since the oath takes effect with respect to grapes, it's going to take effect with respect to figs. So as a result, how can Rav Huna say that the case in our Mishnah is not a valid oath? Meaning, how he hasn't explained what the parallel case is with respect to a shvua, because the shvua that he was proposing is a valid shvua, and we're looking to try and say that the shvua is not valid when you have a shvua b'toch shvua. So Rav Huna lo svirole karabba. So the answer could be that Rav Huna doesn't agree with Rabbah. That in fact although Rabbah says that if you first swear not to have figs and then you swear not to have figs and grapes, so then according to Rabbah the second oath takes effect. But according to Rav Huna, the second oath will not take effect. So that could be an explanation for how Rabbah would understand our Mishnah. So therefore, our Mishnah is in fact talking about a case of I'm going to be a Nazir today. I'll be a Nazir I'm a Nazir tomorrow. And then and when it comes to Shvuot, it's talking about I'm not going to eat grapes and I'm not going to eat figs. And then I say I'm not going to eat figs and grapes. So I've added something to it. But even though I've added something to it, which is sufficient in the case of a neder, that's not sufficient in the case with a shvuah. Okay, So now that we have that, we've addressed the second challenge. Now we're going to bring a third challenge, and the third challenge is from a brisa. So let's take a look and we'll see what we've got. And with that, we will conclude. We're going to offer two answers for that. And then actually we'll deal with two Rans and a Tosos, and then we'll be done for the week, and we'll wish you a Shabbat Shalom. So, Meisvei. So let's take a look. So this is a challenge to Rav Huna. Misha Nazar Shtei Naziros. If somebody makes two vows of Naziros, Mana Esa Rishona, the Hifrish Karban, the Nishal Aleha, and you counted the first 30 days, and now you set aside the Karban that you're going to offer at the end of the 30-day period. So you're ready to be a non-Nazir after the 30-day period. But now the Nishal Aleha, you went and you asked to try to annul your first of your two Nazirus vows, and you were successful. Also, lo shniya barishana, the second vow can take effect as if it can replace the first one. So here, what did you do? You said, I'm going to be a Nazir. Well, we'll figure out what you said exactly. But the point is that you have now a double obligation of Nazirut. You're going to do Nazirut for 30 days and then another Nazirut for 30 days, according to the Ran. And you observe the first 30 days, but then you asked and you got absolved of your obligation. Now, when you get absolved of your obligation, it's an annulment. It's as if it never existed. So even though you've already finished your first 30 days, you haven't yet offered your korban, but you've finished your first 30 days of observing Nazirut, we can allow those 30 days to cover you for the second Nazirut, even though you probably had in mind only to cover for the first Nazirut. So that is what the Brisa says. So the Gemara now asks, Hey Chidami, what's the case? Meaning, what did the person say in order to obligate themselves to be a Nazir? So Amar Harei Nazir Hayom Harei Nazir Lamachar. Now, if you said now, of course, Rav Huna will want to say that what's the situation? He said, I'm going to be a Nazir today, I'm going to be a Nazir tomorrow, right? Well, then Amai also lo shniya barishana. How could the second one fulfill the first? Meaning, how could your observance of the initial 30 days be an observance for the second time you were going to be a Nazir? The second statement of Nazirus adds a day. You didn't observe the 31st day yet. So as a result, how could that count towards your, how could the first observance cover you for the second vow? So ha'ika yomi yaseru, there's an extra day. So ela pshita da'amar hareini nazar hayom hareini nazar hayom. It must be that this brisa is talking about where one says, I'm going to be a nazir today, I'm going to be a nazir today. Utayuvta de Rav Huna, as we turn to the top of Yud Chet Amud Aleph. And so that would seem to suggest that it's a complete upshlag, a complete refutation of Rav Huna. Okay, so now, so the Gemara now answers two different approaches. Lo, it is not in fact a tiyuvta of Rav Huna, because la'olam hareini nazir hayom hareini nazir hareini lamachar. But really, we could say that this situation is that he says, I'm going to be a nazir today and I'm going to be a nazir tomorrow. You can see that the aleph adds in the word nazir, so we can actually just read in hareini nazir lamachar. So umay also lo. And so what? So then, in that case, what does it mean when we say that the second vow? It's as if they fulfilled it with the observance of the first. It means that you fulfilled 29 of the 30 days. Meaning, of course, you have to observe the extra day, but you will have observed 29 of the 30 days. You don't have to begin a new count for that 30th day. So that's one possible explanation of the brisa. Inami, alternatively, kagon shekibos shtei naziros bevas achas. Or we could talk about a situation where you took on the obligation of two nazirut at one moment. And the Ran explains, now in order to see this Ran, you actually have to I'm sorry. So this Ran is the fourth line down in the total Ran. Inami b'shekabel alav shtei nezirut b'bad achat, that you accepted it 2 times at once. Kolomar, meaning and it's like one says, I hereby undertake 2 nezirot. So what's the story? So Kolomar dekahai gavna chayle tarvayu, that in that situation, both of them are chal, both of them apply. Sharei ein achat mehen kodemet, that the Rav Huna would say neither one of those is a first one, right? L'chavrata, to that came before its partner. And only in that situation, when one comes before the other, Denema, that's where we'll say Shelo tachol shniya achareha, that the second one can't take effect. But when both happen at the exact same moment, and you end up with 2 Nazirut at one time, well, then it means, again, according to the Ran, that you're a Nazir for 30 days, and then again for a second 30 days. Now, the Ran, if we turn back to the bottom of Yud Zayin Bet, asks a very interesting question. This is now the Ran, 3 lines up in the widest of the lines. Ela pshita de amar harei nazar hayom, harei nazar hayom, to the Rav Huna, right? We have just, again, back to our challenge. We said the only way that that your observance of the first 30 days could count for the second obligation for Nazirut is if you said, I'm a Nazir today, because otherwise you'll have an extra day, right? Kolomar chayle shtei Nazirut, right? In that situation, that would imply that there would be 2 obligations of Nazirut. Kahai gavna in this situation. Di'ilo, because if you don't say that, ma alta lo shniya b'rishona. What does it mean that the second one could be covered through the observance of the first? Hare lo chala shniya klal. The second one doesn't take effect at all. Ve'im tomar umay kushya. And if you want to say, now this is what's interesting about the Ran. Again, the Ran sometimes asks questions that are more like a Tosfos. So that's one of the nice things, that he does both the Rashi role and the Tosfos role. Ve'im tomer, and if you ask, umay kushya, what kind of question is this at all? Because we are going to see, I believe tomorrow, nehi de'ilu lo nishal al harishona lo chayla shniya uked Rav Huna. We could answer ki mitchel Allah mishkachas ravcha v'chayla v'ked amar rava l'kaman. So that we can say that that in fact that the second oath of Harei Nazar Hayom does not take effect, like Rav Huna says, and the story is the following. It's like what we're going to say in the name of Rava in the next page. The aval gav the ein shvua chal al shvua, as we turn to Yudchet Amud Aleph in the Ran at the top of the Ran, that even though we generally say that a shvua does not take effect within another shvua, im nishal al harishona, if in fact you were going to ask that the first one be annulled, shniya chala alav. So if in fact one were to say, I'm not going to eat figs, I'm not going to eat figs, I swear I'm not going to eat figs, I swear I'm not going to eat figs. So then in that situation, right, then that person annulled the first time that they said it, even though we said that the second one doesn't take effect. Now that they annulled the first one, it's as if they never said the first one, so the second one does take effect. That's what Rava is going to teach us. And indeed, we're going to support Rava from our Mishnah. So yesh lomar mishum de. What's the question that the Ran's asking? The Ran's asking here. We're asking, how could it be that our case of observing a case of observing the Nazirut, when you have 2 Nazirut and you observed the first period and then you annulled the first one, how could it be that the second one could be that the second Nazirut could be fulfilled through your observance of the first? Well, we now have a very simple answer. Yes, that Rav Huna is correct that the second Nizirut does not take effect when you say, I'm hereby a Nazir today, I'm a hereby Nazir today, twice. The second one doesn't take effect ordinarily, but it will take effect if you annul the first one, because that's what Rav is going to teach us tomorrow. So the point is that that could be the situation. So why don't we just answer that? Why do we have the question in the first place? Or if we're going to have the question, why don't we just answer? Well, because Rav Huna agrees with Rava. So Yesh Lomer to Shum to Akasi Lo Kimlan Bahad de Rava, because at this moment in the Gemara, we don't know Rava's statement. And so we're going according to the approach that doesn't know Rava's statement. And so at this moment, our understanding is that if it doesn't take effect, if it doesn't take effect now, lo chayla nami basar samna, it's not going to take effect later. Mishum haki lo mafarish lahu k'derava. And so that's why we don't want to explain it like Rava. So that's the Ran explaining how our question is going to be consistent, even though Rava is going to say again later today, later on Yud Chet, the bottom of Yud Chet, Amud Aleph, he's going to make this specific point. And so you might have thought, why did we ask this question in the first place? And the answer is because sometimes the Gemara assumes a lack of knowledge. Sometimes the Gemara assumes a lot of knowledge, but sometimes the Gemara assumes a lack of knowledge. And so in this case, we're assuming that we haven't gotten to Rava yet. Okay, and last comment is that there's an interesting Tosos on Daf Kaf Zayin Amabet in Masechah Shavuos. And there we have the concept that once something is partially annulled, it's annulled completely. Well, in fact, we're talking about Kagon Shekibel in our second answer. Kagon Shekibel Shtei Nizirut B'vas Achas. It's as if you accepted two Nizirut at one time, and then you got one of them annulled. Well, isn't that a partially annulled vow that we should treat as fully annulled? And so, as a result, if a person makes a single vow to observe two Nizirut and obligations, and then one of those obligations gets removed, shouldn't they both be removed so nothing will be left at all? And Tosfos answers that a single vow to observe two Nizirut is treated as two vows, so the annulment of one does not cause them both to be annulled. So that is the finishing of the third challenge, and we've looked at the Ran and Tosfos in connection with it. And so, God willing, we'll pick up with the fourth and final challenge to Rav Huna tomorrow. So please stay tuned for tomorrow's daf. Tomorrow's daf, I believe that the plan is to learn that daf, God willing, after Shabbos, that we're going to now pick up again with Zoom 45 minutes after Shabbos. So we're not going to be meeting in person. And I think that Eli is away this weekend and somebody will be covering. I think Miriam will be covering for him. And I look forward to seeing you all this coming Wednesday, God willing, when I pick up again with our learning. You have a question, Charlie? Please go ahead.
Yeah. So back to the case where you set aside your korban for your Naziro, and then before you offered it, you got the vow annulled. Normally, the general rule is a chatat can only be given for the specific reason. Is this
Well, clearly, you're absolutely right. What's interesting here is that because effectively, well, first of all, the chatas at the end of a nazirut might be unique because it is not for a sin. Obviously, some people understand.
Well, that's an argument we'll get next Masechta.
but the point is that, and we saw earlier, even in this Masechta, a little bit of that, of whether or not it's a sin. We saw that there's a debate about that. But the point is that this Nazirut is, the korban that you're offering is still a korban to be brought at the end of your Nazir period. So the reason is the same. It's not, and the observance, at least according to Shmuel, is completely identical because he understands that we're talking about Hareini Nazir Hayom, Hareini Nazir Hayom. So as a result, it is the exact same 30-day period for which you are bringing in a nazir. You're bringing the korban. It is only that now it wasn't the oath that you made at 3:57 and 22 seconds in the afternoon on Thursday. It was the oath that you made at 3:57 and 28 seconds on whatever day of the afternoon that I said. So the point is that that's the so as a result, one could say that it's only in that situation that we would be
So
allowing
this is
this.
an exception to the general rule then,
That,
apparently.
well, either that it's an exception or that it is consistent with the general rule, because it is the exact same underlying action. The behavior, the observance of the Nazirut is totally identical. So the underlying facts, the underlying thing that triggered the Nazir hasn't really changed. It was the same observance of the same 30 days. What makes it more difficult is according to Rav Huna. According to Rav Huna, where and especially according to the Rav Huna in the first answer, then I think you really have a good point. And maybe that's one of the reasons that the second answer is given, is that the first answer creates this difficulty. And so as a result, we want to offer a second answer. In the second answer, then that according to Rav Huna, it would be like Shmuel. And so as a result, it would be the exact same 30 days. And so as a result, it's not as if the action that triggered the chatas, meaning it could be that when we say a chatas can't be brought for, you can't set aside for one and then bring it for something else. It's you can't set it aside for one action and then bring it for a different action. But you can
Usually we bring
still the
katas
same
for
action.
actions, not for statements.
Correct, exactly, because the statement isn't this. Arguably, it's not. You're not bringing the chatas because of the statement that you said that you were going to be a nazir. It's because of the observance of your nazirut that you bring and specifically the end of your nazirut that you're bringing the sacrifice. And that's why some people will say that it's about the going back down a level as opposed to going up a level. Anyway, the point is that it is a very interesting question, and Yishkov for asking it, because it leads to an interesting discussion of what the meaning is when we say that you can't bring set aside a sacrifice for one thing and then assign it to something else.
Right. Thank you. Yashikov, Shabbat Shalom. Enjoy Silver Spring, and hopefully the weather won't be too destructive.
Exactly. Hopefully not. And for all of us in New York and in the entire country. So Shabbat Shalom. Have a wonderful Shabbos. Looking forward to continuing our learning together.